Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Today's guests are Brock and Pep from Ottawa, Canada. Their podcast is called Unsportsmanlike Convo with Brock and Pep. It's a sports podcast. They talk Canadian sports, but they also talk U.S. sports, NFL, MLB, NHL. They're great guys. So much fun to talk to. Here we go.
Hey everybody, we are live. This is Sean Ventura here with the Lights Camera Pro podcast, and I'm here with Brock and Pep from Canada. They are Ottawa, Canada. They are the Unsportsmanlike Convo podcast. They talk about sports. They're sports fanatics. We're going to talk about sports today. How you guys doing? Thanks for doing this, guys.
Awesome, man. It's great to hear from you. It's just a great little project you got going on. I like it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. So why don't you guys just quickly take your time. We're in no rush. Just tell us about how you met and how you started the podcast. So many people are interested in how podcasts get started. So just tell us your story.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'll take the lead. Pep and I have been friends for years and teammates playing basketball and a variety of different sports. And Pep actually started a Facebook page called Pep Talk, where it was a kind of a platform for him and his buddies to talk sports and share different videos or highlights and thoughts and different anecdotes related to sports. And Pep's always kind of had the gift of gab, and he was on the radio and doing a variety of different things. And I started to play with the podcast idea when I was more of from a football coach's standpoint. I was going to get into doing a Hoggy Hangout, which was an O-line coaches specific podcast. And I remember going to a conference down in Cincinnati where I met Howard Mudd and Anthony Munoz and some of those guys and pitched the idea, which they loved. But for me, it was from a solo aspect, trying to just pick the brains of the coaches. I was really trying to figure out how to do that properly. And from a coaching and training type aspect, I thought video would be very important, and I wasn't quite grasping how I would make that work. Needless to say, I thought, okay, I should start some practice with the podcast and the equipment just to kind of get used to it. And I started one for my fantasy football league. But then I started to talk to Pierre, and I thought, hey, I said, do you ever think of making Pep Talk a podcast and something we can actually do verbally? And he liked the idea. So we started to screw around with that a little bit from a Pep Talk branding aspect. And we did it for our friends and family. And then we decided to kind of take the next level. And that's where Unsportsmanlike Convo sort of came from, because Pep Talk, that actual slogan, seemed to be all over the place of podcasts. So we decided to go from a different name. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's an excuse for the two of us to get together and hang out and talk sports, all the stuff that we love. So for me, it's been phenomenal.
Cool. And Pep, do you want to say anything about it? Like how it got started or?
Well, yeah, Brock mentioned, the Facebook page that I named Pep Talk. And again, it was something that I started just as a platform for my close friends to chat about the flavor of the day. Like there were lots of stories on a daily when sports was actually up and running.
Right.
But the niche that I tried to create initially was to have it as a respectful group. So, I follow Barstool, I follow The Score, I follow some of those really big sports Facebook pages. But oftentimes, some of those threads get very political and very personal. And so I just thought to myself, I'm just going to invite 100, 150 people that I know. And if they want to bring people into the chat, it has to be on a respectful level. And we're not going to agree all the time. That's for sure. But you can prove your point without insulting somebody. So we tried to keep it in that realm. When we're in the podcast world, that may not be realistic in the long run. But, in terms of Facebook pages, it's kind of our rule number one. Just like, don't insult anybody. Don't go personal. Don't go racist. Don't go religion. Don't go political. Let's stick to sports. If you got a sports take, great. It's been really hard these days because everything seems to be, very political and very racially charged. And we're trying to do our best to just sort of stay neutral and try to guide people in the right conversation direction, if that makes any sense. So, but yeah, with the way Brock explained our history, we go back, 30 years, 25 years. 25 years.
Yeah, let's not count numbers in that sense.
Yeah, that's not important. That's not important.
Yeah, that's not important at all.
Yeah, not important. So yeah.
So, do you guys know the starters?
The NBA guys in Canada.
Yeah,
I've seen them. I tend to follow Leo Routens and Jack. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jack, who does the Raptor games with Matt Devlin. But
no,
I don't watch the starters. No, do you know them personally?
No. Well, yeah, I met them, but they were at NBA TV and they've left. But I did some shows with them, and I was just curious because they came from Canada, but they were just all NBA. And it looks like from your Facebook page that you're not Canada-centric sports; you're all sports.
For the most part, we're the major 4 or 5 kind of sports. We obviously we have a focus on Canadian teams and ones that we're very familiar with, and a lot of our audience is familiar with. But we do cover everything, or we try to cover as much as possible. Everything we're interested in, I guess. Don't ask me about soccer, and don't ask me about some of those other ones.
Tennis or lacrosse, yeah. So what do you think about, we're going to go back to more podcast stuff in a second, but I'm just curious, what do you think about this Ezekiel Elliott getting COVID and some Cowboys and Texans getting COVID? Do you think that's going to affect the start of the NFL or anything like that?
I just actually shared that. I saw that news, and I know Texas was one of the first states to sort of open things up a little bit more, and they were allowing, I think, 50% of fan capacity at some of their events moving forward. So am I surprised that, these are coming up from Texas-based teams? Not really. But I also think that it will have an effect moving forward in terms of whether there's a season or not. And after all of the protests that were across the states with mass gatherings, I think the next week or so is going to be a very good indication as to where this COVID situation is, how manageable it is, and the result will affect sports and what seasons kind of go forward.
Right. It spreads quickly, right? Like this virus is unpredictable. It is it's mutating. It's mutated a couple of times here in Canada. We seem to have it under control here in the nation's capital, but it's a tricky virus. And you're putting teams now. They talk about these hub cities for training camps. Look, you're putting 100 guys under a dome. If one guy gets it, he puts all their coaches at risk. I mean, there's Vic Fangio of the Denver Broncos is in his mid-60s. He can't afford to get COVID.
Yeah, the coaches are really old in NFL, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's issues there.
And you know what? I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I watched I'm not a big NASCAR fan, but I watched a couple NASCAR races and a few soccer Bundesliga games, and the stadiums are empty, and it's not the same.
No, not at all. I watched the NASCAR ones, too, because it's on, and I had a couple buddies who were NASCAR fans, and I remember watching it when I was at school at Colgate. There's a couple of the buddies who were big NASCAR guys, so I kind of started following it. So I just picked it up again, and it's nowhere near as exciting as with the fans. And NASCAR is at such the fans don't impact it that much anyway, where we're already noticing a difference with the NASCAR with no fans, but the impact is lower, where a sport like football or basketball, baseball, even baseball, maybe not quite as much, but the other two where the fans are very much engaged and riled up for the majority of the game, that's going to have a pretty significant impact. Hockey as well, obviously. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave that out, Canadians. Hockey. That's but yeah, it's eerie. It's a different feel for sure.
Our Toronto Raptor fans here in Canada are insane, and I got goosebumps watching them last year and the Jurassic Park just outside the ACC. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. So this is a weird question, but there's a guy I'm interviewing on Friday. He's got a Washington Wizards podcast. but his co-host is Larry Hughes, who's an ex-player. And Larry Hughes.
Ron's running mate for a couple of years.
Yeah. So he's got him as a co-host, and I didn't realize that there's like a whole network. It's called this Believe, but it's BLEAV, Believe. So I was just curious if you guys have ever interviewed players from sports, or you've had guests on your shows.
Yeah, I mean, that's, we've had a few guests on our shows already who are, one of our best episode is still one with Ken Tasker, who's a journeyman through the hockey ranks, but he's notorious for his fighting ability. And he was on all the sports disasters when sports go wrong. And he's a guy that I've known forever. And I remember still to this day being down at school at Colgate and my roommate saying, "Brock, come take a look at this. You'll love it. It's a hockey fight." And then I'm watching it and it's all blurry. There's no HDTV back then. And I said, turn up the volume a bit. And it's, Tasker with the right. And I'm like, I can't make out his face because, again, if I'm dating myself, we're going back quite a bit. But I'm like, I know him. And he's just going toe to toe with somebody. And that episode was one of the best ones we've had to date, and we've asked for a lot of follow-ups within that one, and we're actually looking at doing a few different segments with guys that are currently playing or retired, who have the ability to share more stories than guys that are currently still with an organization, because they're kind of a little bit more limited as to what they feel comfortable expressing and stories they want to tell until they're kind of out. Once they're out, the filter is off.
The Tasker fight, was that Trevor Sen?
That one for the Sports Go Bad was a Trevor Sen.
Yeah, if I'm not a real big bloodlust kind of guy, but if you're into hockey fights, or if your fan base want to ever see probably the best fight you'll see in hockey, it's Ken Tasker versus Trevor Sen. It's two minor league teams. I don't even remember who we played for, but
Toledo Storm.
It's pretty wild stuff.
Pretty brutal. Yeah, I grew up with the Bruins and the Celtics, so Terry O'Reilly and a lot of those guys knocking out teeth. So
was it Kevin McHale who clotheslined Kurt Rambis or James Worthy? I can't remember who it was in the playoffs, but
I don't know if it was Kevin McHale. But when I was working at Turner, he was in the hallways, man, and he is giant. Like he's
Kevin McHale.
Yeah, Kevin McHale. Yeah, Shaq's in the hallways, like Kevin McHale. I like come up to Shaq's waist, like he's just 7'1". He's massive.
Big Diesel.
How do you promote your podcast? How do you get it out to people? Are you using social media? It's a big question from new people. Or are you doing, like I found out from some people that I talked to in Europe, they do promo swaps and also stuff like this, being a guest on someone else's show.
Yeah, I mean, that's... we use the platform. Instagram and Facebook are two big ones that we use. Twitter, not so much at this point. But the best ways of doing it are things like this, where you swap some promotion between a couple of platforms, and that's been really good. Now we're, again, in all aspects of it, we're still pretty new at it.
Yeah, I'd say I'm very novice still, working my way through the podcast ranks. But Brock's a full-time dad, so like, and then full-time work as well. So time is, we have a hard time even carving out an hour like in the week. So
yeah,
we do our best to just sort of, and then on top of that, creating content that's easy to listen to and entertaining. So. I'd say we're pretty novice. We're getting our feet wet and trying to figure out a good schedule and a good plan. But we're learning from guys like you by being guests on shows like this. So,
and do you guys live up the street, or would you ever do like a remote thing where you're both in your houses or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably half an hour from each other, I guess. So. We would we have done multiple remote ones. Okay. We've tried a variety of different platforms and try and get something as seamless as possible. So either Skypes and FaceTimes or different group chatting, video conferencing that way. We do still have video when we do it because it's still a better interaction for us. And also the speaking cues is a lot easier to pick up than being strictly audio, like on a phone call. You kind of have a better idea of when the person's done their idea. So if you don't cut them. We also tried some third-party stuff that there was a fee to it that apparently would record each audio input separately and locally, and then you can kind of combine them.
Yep.
I think it was still fairly new when we did it, so it wasn't as seamless as I would have liked in terms of an editing. So, we just kind of set up our remote setups to be the best it can be and as easy as possible. But yeah, part of the appeal for us is getting together too. So during the summertime, without the whole pandemic situation, we would be weekly getting together at a local joint that, we work something out with them, and we bring the podcast there. We record it on their patio.
Let's plug them.
Yeah.
The RX Center is a local, it's a multi-purpose venue, mainly sports, but they've got a field house where you can drink and eat after you play your sport. So we would go there. The field house, I think, is actually what it's called.
Yeah, the field house. There's a big patio, so if it's nice out, we're outside, and we're kind of surrounded by people who are playing rec sports as well. So they're the people that they're our audience for a lot of it.
Right.
And, it provides a nice little atmosphere, background noise of just a lot of, excitement, sports chatter, people chatting over beers and wings. And that gives us an opportunity to have beers and wings as well.
And people ask, they see two microphones on a table with a podcast, a roadcaster, and a couple of laptops. They're curious. They're like, oh, something's going on. We get confused for radio guys, right? Usually.
I didn't even know you knew that was it, Roadcaster.
What did I call it?
It was right. You were right. I didn't even know you knew anything.
Well, you've mentioned it 50 times.
Did I? Okay.
I'll retain it at least at some point. I'll retain it. But no, so it provides us with an audience and some curiosity by seeing two guys on a microphone with microphones in front of them and a fancy looking gadget thingy, the Roadcaster, and a couple laptops. So it's a good exposure for us. So we try to get out into the community as much as possible, and we have a pretty good. I'd say we have a decent social media outreach. So we do okay in that regard.
Cool. Very cool. So I've done a lot of research about the video thing, and I'm using this product now called Ecamm Live. Have you heard of that?
I have. I think I tried that way back in the day.
Yeah. So what they have, Brock, is it's $15 a month, and so you can also almost make it like TV, and you can add a roll in of an open of a show and music, and it's kind of like the idea of the Roadcaster Pro, but they have this thing called the Ecamm call recorder, and that's the only reason why I use it, because I can record the tracks to that from the video, and then they will split out. Like I'm a video editor by trade. Podcasting is pretty new, like a year. So I want split track, so I'm able to move stuff around and cut little things out. I'm not getting crazy and cutting out every and ah, but there are certain situations where you just want to cut out the other person's stuff and leave my stuff in. Right. So that works. And now, actually, I just got last night approached by a woman from Restream, because with Ecamm Live, which is much easier than trying to use this OBS software and the Stream software, Stream OBS with YouTube Live or Facebook Live. And I've discovered that the reach is further on Facebook, so I'm doing Facebook instead of YouTube. The software, the person from Restream, what that does is they send out your live feed to 8 different places. So they send it out to LinkedIn, Periscope on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I don't even know. But she's going to give me a free subscription, which is $20 a month, to promote, just put a Restream logo on my broadcast. And I want to check that out, because obviously, think about it like television. Like if you go on TV, like I had this guy from the Truth or Consequences podcast, which is a true crime podcast, and he gets tens of thousands of downloads a month. He went on local TV in Arizona, and his downloads just went, like they just exploded from a few hundred to several thousand. So It's the same thing with this. If you can broadcast yourself out to 7, 8 different places at once, especially live, because live puts you at the top of Facebook everywhere, or at the top of Twitter, or at the top of YouTube, whatever, then you're reaching like hundreds of people rather than tens of people. So I'm not promoting them yet, but it's a really interesting idea, and I want to try it out because the more people you reach, the better, right?
100%. That's it. We've been wanting to do a couple of live things moving forward too, and so yeah, those are great tips and stuff we'll definitely look at. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much to do. Like even just setting up our interview today takes like an hour because you got to, post to other Facebook groups and set up the live in this thing. And it's a lot. I'm lucky right now because I'm not freelancing because my freelance stopped because of COVID. So I can do this stuff. But once I go back to work, oh my God, this is just a lot of stuff to do a video and an audio podcast and all this stuff. So if you can streamline it at some point and or if you have people who love your podcast and they want to intern and help you out, or I'm trying to get my 15-year-old son to help me, but he's day trading instead. So,
probably more money in day trading.
No, I don't know, man. I don't know. He's doing okay. So are you guys feeling this? Are you guys feeling the explosion of podcasting right now? Because I'll just give you an example. I used to work for TCM, Cartoon Network, and Turner Sports. And TCM just came out with their own podcast network. And a friend of mine, a colleague of mine that I know, Angela, she is now the director of podcasts. And I'm looking on all these job boards for video editor jobs, and I'm seeing a ton of podcast jobs: podcast producer, podcast editor, manager, blah, 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 booker. And I just feel like, and tell me if you feel the same in Canada, that the podcast, there's just a lot more jobs, there's a lot more interest. Do you feel the podcast explosion that I feel?
Yeah, there's definitely, I feel the explosion, whether it's specific to Canada, in terms of looking for jobs and stuff, I can't speak to, but, when you see, companies like Spotify acquire Joe Rogan's, that kind of stuff, you see that the big players are making moves. That along with again, some alumni from Colgate had messaged us about their father being in the radio business, and they were starting their own podcast department, and expressed some interest in seeing if we were interested in sort of moving over to that platform. So there you just feel there's a lot of movement, and people are starting to embrace podcasts a little bit more. And it seems to be sort of the choice of media for a lot of people because it's kind of on demand, and nobody wants to wait for things. And live is very much a nice, but there's also a schedule involved, and if it doesn't fit their listening needs, so having it right at the palm of their hand is something that it seems is the growing want for the population.
Yeah, in Canada here we have TSN and Sportsnet. Those are our two main sports channels, and I'd say each network has their Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan. So I think I would have to safely say on TSN it's Jay and Dan, their show. They have their own podcast, Jay Onright and Dan O'Toole.
Yeah. So which one's Michael Jordan?
Oh,
I just want to know because you're probably
Dan O'Toole. Okay. But then on the Sportsnet side, we have Tim and Sid. Sid Sixero. Yeah, I can't pronounce their last names, but right. Again, they're the headliners on their network, and they have their own podcast. So yeah, totally. I mean, even a couple of hockey guys on TSN, Jeff O'Neill, they have their lunch hour podcast. So it seems like every single guy on those networks who headline the main time slots have their own podcasts, and they're very successful. I mean, geez, the Tim and Sid podcast is probably more popular than their Sportsnet show.
Yeah. And I just feel like maybe 5-10 years ago, everybody had to have a website, but now everyone has to have a podcast. Like all the financial people have podcasts, all the realtors have podcasts, all the companies have podcasts, all the sports teams have podcasts. And it's a really interesting thing because you're really inside another person's head when you're talking to them. It's just you and them, and you're very focused because you don't see the video. This is different. What we're doing right now is different, especially live. Because you're like, should I shave? And is there too much reflection in my glasses? But you don't think about that stuff when you're doing the audio. You're just in it, and you're almost like down on the desk and talking to someone, and you're not worried about how you look or if there's dish soap behind you or anything like that. So it's just different. But I really do like this because of what both of you, one of you said, is that you get to see the reactions of people and that they're actually listening to you and that they're done speaking.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've been over a lot of stuff, guys, but if we can wrap it up with, two questions. First, do you use any ads, sponsors, or affiliates with your show?
Not currently, no. We've run ads before, and that's generally more for for our practice, but also to help promote local businesses that we knew the owners, and they supported the show one way or another, whether it's just listening or spreading the word. And so we've created some commercials early on for those type of businesses, but we haven't got into really plugging in ad things. And I think some of that, to be honest, has to do with, we're using Anchor right now for how we distribute and get it to all of the platforms. And there is an ad-based revenue generating type thing in there, but it's not available to Canadians at this point. So we sort of pulled that back until they figure it out. So that's kind of why we haven't at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on if you're like, oh, I got to make some money on this, or if you just want to do it for fun and for what you're interested in. I saw one guy, he was doing a video podcast, and he would have local businesses' business cards pop up like every 10 minutes. And I guess he was charging them $20 to do it or something. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can do it. But being guests, being guests on other people's podcasts, I've heard letting other people host your show. Like if you had a sports guy that you liked, or this guy from the Wizards or whatever, and you're like, hey, come and, Peps getting gallbladder surgery. Come and sit in. And then promo swaps. You guys and I could just make one and a 30-second, 15-second thing and drop it at the beginning of our shows and just run it for a few shows or something. So anything you can do to help other people and promote your podcast is great. But if you guys can wrap it up with just each of you taking your time and just telling us what kind of advice you have for podcasters, especially sports podcasters, like the kind of time you put in and make sure you love it and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, I'd say if I have any advice for anybody who wants to get into sports podcasting, it's be organized, because a half an hour template can be easily an hour and a half without even blinking. And Brock and I have tinkered with the idea of shortening and doing like little mini podcasts. We have so much to talk about. We're two guys we each have opinions on whatever topic we're talking about. So a half an hour is really short. But if you're a solo podcaster, I would say come in organized, have an agenda, take breaks if you need to wrap up a segment, and just prepare yourself for your show. And I've heard a couple of local podcast guys I know who are just like, they're lovely guys. I think their intentions are good, but their podcasts are a little disorganized. It's like a group of guys sitting on the couch, and that's cool. It's a little disorganized for me. So I'd say organize your thoughts, know what you're going to talk about, have specific topics of the day. If you're going to go headlines and you want to talk about everything under the sun, cool, but call it headlines and let the audience know what you have planned. So that would be my advice. Again, I'm a novice, so I'm by no means an expert, but that's just from my own experience.
Right.
Yeah, I would echo Pierre a lot in terms of the organization and in an effort to keep things structured and sort of on point. We do have a tendency of getting not off topic, but really getting into a topic because we are passionate about what the topics we're talking about. I don't know how many times I can say topic in the last minute, but anyway, what I would say though is the hardest thing that I found when we started was actually just starting. And that's from a guy who went with a different idea. I was going to go with that coaching one. And it was something that I was doing. I enjoyed. That's a lot of my expertise, I guess. But then I got a few episodes under, but I never really dove into it and just went. And I think that would be the biggest hurdle for a lot of people when they're just starting is really just get going. And you're going to kind of learn as you go. You're going to, learn your audience. You're going to learn new things, what works, what doesn't work, what you're comfortable with and what you're not. Just make sure that you start and then, choose something that you enjoy. And then that way it doesn't feel like it's a job or you have to put all this effort into it. I mean, Pep and I watch sports all the time. So, to discuss it is a natural thing for us. And because of that, it's been very enjoyable to do these kind of things. It's been fun. I look forward to every episode. Very
cool. And do you guys listen to like Bill Simmons or some of the ESPN stuff?
Oh, yeah. Totally. I love Bill Simmons, one of my favorite guys on ESPN. Thoughts are concise. He's had crazy lifetime experience. Like, I think he was working for the Celtics at some point, not for their organization, but following the Celtics. He's got some crazy Larry Bird stories, but he's a great listen. Yeah, for sure.
There's some good ones. Solid Verbal is one that I'm a big college football guy. So that kind of stuff, Spittin' Chicklets, like those,
Pat McAfee's really good.
Pat McAfee is very good. And again, it's the natural sport stories and stuff behind the scenes that are always great. You can get whatever you want out there nowadays.
Are you an Atlanta guy, Sean?
Yeah, I'm in Atlanta, and I just wanted to mention to you, I started with one of those stands, and my pod mic here is not. I'm not using it because I can't get a high level on these live broadcasts, and I may have to get a new interface. I can't figure it out. I've tried a million things, but this thing here, the ability to just sort of lean back and not all, I was always sitting forward when I was doing my podcast and just, I don't know, my neck was hurting. This thing is crazy cool. It's $99 from Rode and the pod mic too. This has a built-in pop filter and a built-in shock absorber, so it doesn't make any sound, but you just put it right on your desk and you can just move it anywhere. And it stays, and it's totally worth it. I
hear you about the back. After about 40 minutes, from my upper neck to my mid back, everything seizes from leaning forward. And sure, I'm at the microphone.
Just always having to lean like this. That's because
he's doing it off the kitchen counter normally. I have one of those things, not that specific one, but I have one when I do it here, which is fine.
Like that?
Like that. I have the little arm and the condenser. It's off the table because you're here.
All right.
And and the other thing is that we're like squeezing in to make sure we're in his shot. I'm sweating like crazy.
Oddly enough, I'm not my.
You're leading in the shot. Okay. You guys are so great. Let me just ask you one more thing for your actual fans, because I posted to your group. What is just quickly, 5 minutes or less? What is one of your favorite sports stories, each of you, and then we'll be done.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's a tough one.
That was a tough one.
Personal experience or just something I've seen on TV or
whatever you want, man.
It would have to be this 2005 Steelers playoff run when they were a 6th seed. They barely snuck into the playoffs, and they beat the Bengals after Kimo von Oelhoffen rolled over Carson Palmer's knee, and then John Kitna had to come in. They didn't. That Bengals team was really good. They should have beaten the Steelers, but they didn't. And then on to Indianapolis, and we all know what happened there with Polamalu's interception. So they played on the road 3 games in a row, destroyed Denver, and then went back to Detroit for Jerome's final game at home, winning the Super Bowl. That had to be like, geez, I don't know. That was more exciting than the Raptors last year for me. So that gave me goosebumps. That's my personal story.
I don't know. It's hard to. They're just replaying a World Junior Championship. Canada versus Russia from 2009, and I actually had my son in here, and I was pitching it as a history lesson because he needed to follow this because that game was classic and the goal to the last 5 seconds to tie the game. But I would have to go back to I'm a big Florida Gator fan. I know you must love that being from Georgia, but the first time I actually got to the Swamp to watch a game was on my 30th birthday. My wife had got us tickets and we went down, and it was literally I think a week or two following Tim Tebow's historic speech because they had lost to Ole Miss with that 4th and 1. And I remember thinking, I'm going down here. I wanted to see a team that was going to compete. And now they lost the game. Are they out of the national championship talk? And it was LSU in the Swamp. We had really great seats. I didn't even sit 1 second. And from the start of that game, I think the third pass was just tipped into Percy Harvin's hands, took it to the house, and Florida never relinquished the lead and dominated from start to finish. But I just remember never sitting, not being able to speak for about a week after, and them going on to win the national championship that year. So for me, that was probably one of my biggest one. Green Bay. I saw Green Bay host Chicago, and my roommate from Colgate's cousin is TJ Lang, and he got us tickets, and we were up in the box, and I ended up sitting next to Clay Matthews Sr. the whole time. Senior. And I got to say, that was quite the thrill. We had a lot of good chats there. Anyway, there's a few things, but it was those are my favorite sports stories.
Nice. You guys obviously love sports. I'll just add real quick that growing up, sitting next to my grandfather in his den watching the Celtics, and I can't tell you how many times, 10, 20 times, where it's like, there's no way. There's no way. They're down by 7. There's 3 seconds left. There's 5 seconds left. And Larry Bird would make a shot and get fouled and make 2 more shots and win the game. And I just remember thinking, this isn't even possible. Like, it's got to be like a deal with the devil or something. There's no way that this guy can win this many games. It's impossible.
And you know what? It really was. He hurt his back so bad in '86 that how he played for, actually 92, how he played for 6 more years is remarkable. He played in so much pain his last 4 years of his career. It's amazing that they were even in the playoff hunt, let alone, competing for a championship all those years. So yeah, amazing.
So amazing. Thanks, guys. This has been awesome. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and do me a favor, share it on social media, share it on Instagram. I'm going to put you guys on LinkedIn and YouTube and promote the crap out of this. So do the same, and I hope to talk to you guys again soon, and maybe we'll do a promo swap someday or something.
Anytime. Yeah. I love it.
That's
all right.
Great.
Keep in touch and take care. Thanks for doing this, man.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next week, we have stand-up comedians Kevin Guti and Kevin Israel, who are both hilarious, and they are from the Gutting the Sacred Cow podcast. It's going to be fun. Check it out next week.